Hey, readers! Welcome back to another episode of Not Reading for Content. We are here today to discuss Volume 2 of Dinosaur Sanctuary. This is our month of manga. We are ending out our translation season with this wonderful manga series that is a reread for Leandra and a first time read for me. But before we get on to that, we have a couple of housekeeping things, and then we also have our bookish bite. So, first, foremost, the housekeeping. You guys are probably dying at the edge of your seat to know what book we're reading next. And unfortunately, I can't tell you just yet. It might be in the description if we have decided by the point this is published. But we just wanted to give you a heads up that you will definitely have a book verbalized to you on our next episode. So you will know by the end of August what book we will be reading. Most likely, this is the book we will be reading in October because in September we have some bookish discussions that we would like to share with you. Now that we have that out of the way, you guys know kind of what to expect for the next couple of months, so we can move on to our bookish bite. So, Leandra, what I would like for us to discuss today is our preference in age categories for our POVs that we're following. Do you have a preference? Do you not care? What are your thoughts?
You definitely know that I have a preference, and I think we have a similar view on things. For me, the hardest POV to follow is just young adults. So, teenagers, and unfortunately, with every passing year, I feel like even early 20s can be hit or miss depending on how it's written because they can sound younger. Like you could be
Yeah.
following a 22, 23-year-old, and I'm like, if I didn't know they were 22, 23, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me they were 17. So I think that that's an age range that's just starting to be an issue for me. And I'm actually more okay with middle grade. I don't want to go too young. So I will say probably my preference is youngest is maybe 12 to 13, which is like older middle grade just before they get angsty, just before they enter high school and kind of get ruined for a few years for me. And my preference is adulthood. I will say, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, adjusting the discussion, adjusting the question a little bit, I'm more sensitive if it's first person than if it's third person. Like if you give me first person and YA, dear God, like that is not a combination I want. So I will say that I'm super sensitive to first person. It's like my least favorite version of a perspective. I prefer third person, if we're going to be honest, which I know isn't everyone's preference, but first person just really reemphasizes my like discomfort with a young adult character or someone in their early 20s. So yeah, you're nodding, you agree with me. Not sure if you have anything else to add.
I mean, I agree with all of your age categories. My preference is adults. I do like to follow adult characters. YA for me, following a high schooler, especially in first person, I don't want to be in a high schooler's head. One, especially if it's like a romance YA, I just it
Mm,
makes me feel a little icky, and I'm like,
yeah.
I don't need to be here for these moments. And I do think that those books absolutely have a place. Like I think that they have their audience. They are meaningful writings. Or obviously there are some books that are not, but a lot of them are. They have their place. It's just not with me because it just either makes me uncomfortable if it's a romance. The dialogue can make me a little bit cringe, like it cringe a little bit at certain
Mhm.
things. And yeah, the angst, the drama, the also the I don't know if it's internalization or the kind of me factor. I feel like, and I do not have children, so take this with a grain of salt. But when you're really, really young, so twos, threes, fours, you are in that stage of like, look at me, look at me. And that's an outward expression, right? So you're telling everyone to look at you. Through middle grade, you kind of you still want that attention, but you don't verbalize it as often. And then I feel like with high school, it's internalized. But when you're reading a book, that internalization is what the readers are getting. And I'm like, "Ooh, I don't like this."
Like, get me out of this person's head.
Yes. So, yeah, that's why I don't typically enjoy YA. It's also very hard for me with the themes surrounding YA. I like middle grade because middle grade seems to be finding yourself, adventurous. stories where you are more than you think you are. You're discovering you're more than you think you are type of storylines. And that's, I think, why I enjoy a middle grade voice, because
Mm,
they are they don't have to be confident to start out the book. They could be someone who is more leery of new experiences, but I feel like kids in that age range are more courageous about taking risks and
mm.
doing things outside of their comfort zone, and I think it shows in the writing. And then, of course, like, adult novels I enjoy because the themes, I just feel like they can go a little bit deeper, a little bit darker, depending on the type of story that you're reading. I appreciate those novels the most. As far as first person and third person go, I don't think I have a preference when it comes to adult novels, although I will say, if it's in first person, I am not gonna remember our main character's name.
Oh my gosh, I know. You're like, "Somebody call their name out so I can remember who you are."
That's one thing, during Battle of the Booktubers is one of the things that I've noticed as I was editing all my vlogs, the amount of times I say, "I don't remember our main character's name," and it's literally while I'm reading the book, and I could go back and tell you every video that I said that in, it is because it's a first person storyline.
Mhm.
So, anyway, but yeah, we agree very much so in our age range preference.
Yeah, we definitely agree on everything we've mentioned, but I do think that my initial answer kind of swayed the conversation because what you were asking was actually POVs, right? Perspectives, not really publishing categories. I think everyone listening knows that you and I don't like YA. Like, I don't think we're shocking anyone. But say we take a multiple POV story that does have a character perspective with a child, a character perspective with a teen, and then one with an adult. I don't think my preferences would change. I think I'd rather be in the adult head than the child's head. And even if this is for an adult audience, the last thing I want to read is a teen's perspective. So I don't know. So I feel as though it goes beyond simply being like, don't really read YA. I just,
Yeah.
for some reason, that impacts the narrative. When I'm in that POV, I'm like, oh, great. Now we're with the teen, even though I'm totally fine with following like a 10-year-old in an adult book.
Yeah, I think that I probably do better with it if I'm following, so if we have a book that is multiple
Sure.
POV
Mhm.
and it's an adult novel, but you're following a child or a teenager, I do better with it in those stories than I would if they were
Definitely.
just on their own in a YA or any middle grade book.
Or even in a middle grade book, if you have, like,
Yes.
a teen, like, I do better with it too.
Yeah, I agree, because the perception's different. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's gonna change, like, the overall all feel of that character and the information that you're getting as the reader, I think. So, yeah, I would say that it's still the same preference. I prefer to be an adult's head, and then I would skip over the teen and go to the middle grade age child and then go back to, our teenager. I do like stories that have multiple POVs that are different age categories. I think that it adds a little bit of texture. It also allows for the author to explore different points of view as far as how people see the world. I'm thinking of, like, Day of the Triffids we read, and I don't think we got her did we get her perspective, the little girl whose brother died? I think we did. At least in the very beginning, when she was alone by herself in the
Right. Yes, 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 when she was trying to take care of her little brother. Mhm.
yes, and so we got to see that world through a child's eyes, which I think is a good thing to be able to do in that storyline. So I absolutely like it when stories do that. My preference is definitely the adult.
Yeah, for sure, and that's not to say that we have read YA books in the YA category that we've enjoyed. We
Oh, for
have
sure.
read young adult perspectives in an adult book, as we've mentioned, that we've enjoyed. So it's not necessarily like black and white, absolutely don't like it, but I have less trust, maybe.
Yes.
Less trust.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, anyways, so moving on to today's discussion of Dinosaur Sanctuary Volume 2. Obviously, there is a reason for this bookish bite. If you've read this, you probably know why we are discussing age POVs. If you haven't, what are you doing still here? You should probably walk away because I'm about to give a summary and I'll try to keep it vague, but no promises that I won't give more away than you would want to hear. So please pause, go read volume 2 and then come back unless you're okay with spoilers, then that's also okay. So, at the beginning of this volume, we do start off with a pretty intense question that we had with volume 1, which was, what is this dreaded incident that kind of led to a fissure between humans and dinosaurs? Kaidu, we get some backstory about him, but we also continue to see throughout this collection of kind of mini stories, episodes of this volume, where Suzume is growing because she's still a dino keeper in training, trying to figure out how to interact with these dinosaurs, how to interact with the guests at the park. We get more guests interacting with the dinosaurs. There are discussions of grief, of learning how to care for another being and put that well-being first before your own thoughts, your own desires for this creature. And it just remains a bit heartwarming while also being kind of intense. There are definitely some intense depictions in this one as well. I think it's a bit more graphic because we have it on page. But overall, you're just getting to know the characters more. And Suzume, by the end of this volume, seems to be starting her next phase as a dino keeper, which is very exciting. So without further ado, let's get into this narrative. So in volume 1, we did have one story that had a part 1 and a part 2. And we ended up getting that once again, but at the start of this volume. And it did involve the incident, which Kaidu ends up reflecting on with Suzume. She probably has heard the story to my understanding, but maybe just from newspaper references, how it impacted her family, specifically her father. But Kaidu ends up kind of really bringing us back. We have a bit of a flashback moment. What did you think of that scene and the part 1 and part 2 of it?
I was a little surprised that it wasn't more dramatic. I mean, it
Mm.
is, like, obviously someone dies, but I felt like the way that they kept talking about it was something astronomical happened, like, numerous people died, maybe we had, like, a moment where a dinosaur had broken out of a park and then attacked a city. Like, I was expecting bigger, and we just get that the dinosaur killed one handler, got out, and headed towards the visitor center, but then no one else died, and they killed the dinosaur. And I was like, "That's it? That's what happened?" Which I'm glad no one else died, but I guess I was just expecting it to be bigger. And so I think my expectations made me a little disappointed in what happened. I did like I liked Kaidu in explaining his story, apologizing to Suzume, and we got a little bit of explanation as far as how or why he is so hardwired in making sure that we understand that dinosaurs aren't pets. So, like, that part I liked, but I will say I was a little disappointed with the incident.
Yeah, it's so funny. Okay, there's so much to respond to. First and foremost, we all know I'm rereading this series, right? So, like, I've read volumes 1, 2, and 3. This is all supposed to just be review for me. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that was the incident. Like, I completely forgot. I truly went into this book and actually left volume 1 when we were saying, "Oh, are we going to find out what this incident is?" I was like, "Ooh, we're gonna disappoint you guys because we still haven't found the incident." Like, I've read volume 5 volumes, and I was like, "We still haven't hit that incident. That's still a mystery. We don't know." And it's like, Leandro, it was revealed in volume 2. So clearly, it was not that impactful for me either. When I reread this, I was like, "Oh my gosh." Also, I feel as though, yes, I definitely agree with you. I would have anticipated more of a Jurassic Park moment to bring
Yeah.
up, that book where multiple deaths, it was cataclysmic and like maybe more than one dinosaur got out. It was horrific and that's why people are afraid. But the fact that a dinosaur got out and yes, killed a handler, but was immediately taken down, no visitors were harmed. I could see it harming reputation. So
Yeah,
I could
for
see it
sure.
like from the business end being, people don't feel safe, even though we locked down the situation pretty quickly. It was still really scary, and you don't know if we're going to be as successful the next time, if there is a next time. But I agree. I was expecting there to be more bloodshed and more terror. But on top of the fact that I feel as though this incident that impacted her father's death, I expected it to not be as quick of a mention because there
Yeah.
was a moment where I had to go back and say, wait, was Yamaga-san her father? I didn't think so. And he was a professor. I didn't think he was a dino keeper, working with Ichigo. I was really confused. And then when we got to the line where Kaido says, this event eventually is one factor that led to your father taking his own life. And I was like, what? And that's it. That's all we hear about it impacting Suzume and her family. And I also thought that was going to be more. And I obviously didn't even notice or remember that when I read this the first time around, because I couldn't remember what might have happened to her father. I just knew that he died.
Yeah, I was a little shocked that we didn't linger on that a little bit more, or that it didn't. I don't want to say that it didn't impact her, because like everything like that's going to impact someone, but we didn't talk about it. Like she essentially said, like, originally she avoided dinosaurs and didn't want anything to do with them, but then she remembered the happier times and decided that she wanted to be a dino keeper. But because we didn't get to see that progression, I feel like that is a forgetful moment. Like, that's not going to be impactful for me as a reader to know that her father ended up taking his own life because of those events that transpired, when it doesn't seem to have impacted the story.
Right. Honestly, so we get 3 deaths mentioned or seen on page in these first 2 chapters, and the one that was the most visceral and that was the saddest for me was the dinosaur, was a
Yeah.
Chico actually. But and obviously, because I think it was far more like shocking on the page. We had a snipe shooter like take down the dinosaur, and you could see that it was all these circumstances, the construction that frightened the creature, like various things that was like just out of its control. The character was, or not the character, but the dinosaur was trying to, you know, protect itself, didn't know what was going on, didn't have the capacity, and was frightened. And so you just feel badly for this creature. And it actually reminds me of, not in the same sense, because I know it was very different circumstances, but to bring this to like real life comparison, wasn't there a situation? I might have the name wrong, but was it Harambe? Was that a
Yes.
gorilla who
Yeah.
also was ended up being taken down, was killed after a small boy fell into the enclosure? And I mean, I don't really know what could have been done, what different decisions could have been made, but I, for some reason, had this very kind of one-to-one comparison in my brain saying, we've seen this before in like zoo and sanctuary situations, like in real life. So it definitely felt realistic. It just
Yeah.
didn't feel like the major incident that we were expecting. Meanwhile, I do think that there was a good blend or transition into the following chapter, which was, I believe, Suzume being charged with having to take care of this tiny dinosaur baby and try to give it the best, you know, foot forward in being healthy, rejoining its own family. And so after we learn why Suzume's father died, that he took his own life, it is kind of interesting that the following chapter we see her entering a semi quasi parenthood situation.
Yeah. To talk about things that kind of surprised me or didn't go as planned in the story, to talk about that, when we originally learn that what was the little dinosaur's name? Benzai? Is that right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yes. I think it was Benzai.
Benzai? Yeah,
Don't
one of the
have the
two.
pronunciations, yeah, fully understood, but I know which character. Yeah.
Um, so we learn that if he doesn't connect with his family, that he will be sent to the lab. And to me, at the beginning, I'm thinking that that means they're gonna put this animal down, that they're gonna use it for scientific, like, medical, not experiments,
Autopsy
but yes,
experiments. Yeah.
that's the impression I was given. And then at the end, when she decides, like, after obviously his family doesn't accept him, that the best place for him is the lab, I was like, "How dare
What?
you?"
Like, Suzume, what are you talking about? She's like, "This is the best for him. Let's kill him." Like, that's what I pretty much heard her say in my mind as well. So we were on the same page.
Yeah. Which obviously then we learned, like, oh, at the lab, like, they get to actually be able to study how, like, their intelligence, and they get to do all these different, learn different things, and I'm like, "Well, why didn't we know that ahead of time?" Like, that seems like something that, because I still would have understood her not wanting this creature that she's taking care of. I still would have understood the concept of wanting it to be with its family and
Mhm.
not wanting to go to this superficial place and be away from its own kind. I would have understood that as a sentiment, But instead, like the entire time, I just have this like dread that this dinosaur is going to die because its parents won't accept it and its brothers and sisters keep picking on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly was like, this creature is gonna be euthanized. Like that's what I
Yeah.
was like, that is the plan. And especially the countdown, they're like 2 weeks, one day,
Yeah.
today's the day. And I was like, dear God. And the thing is, again, I recall there being a happy ending for Benzai, but I was like, again, I was kind of correcting and like maybe putting different pieces together. I assumed that he flourished and did eventually be with his family. And I was like, I know he gets a happy ending. And obviously that's the only happy ending that we're told. So then when she's like, yep, we're going to send him to the lab, I was like, am I really not remembering anything that happens in this book? Like, what is going on? Like, why is it so sad? And then they're like, he'll get to practice puzzling and do all these great things. And it's like, phew, oh my gosh, like you really kind of scared us for a second. So I think that shows maybe a weakness in the like manga graphic novel format where you just miss some of the context if they
Yeah.
don't really outline it for you ahead of time. Because even if they said, he would be lonely, he wouldn't be with his own kind, he'd have to be with like other strangers because it's not like Suzume would be there. And so
Right.
they could have kind of framed it in that way, but it definitely did sound like they're like, either he flourishes here or we kill him. Like, that's it. And I'm like, ugh, gosh.
Oh, it's so sad. I did enjoy the process of Benzai figuring out how to do the puzzle, just because in like we I guess I think we when was it? We saw it almost looked like a cat toy where they put like the treats and they have to roll, and it was for one of the bigger dinosaurs. Was that
Yes.
for Hanoku? No, it wasn't for the
Where was it for Yuki? Was it for Yuki? Because
I
she
do
was
think it was
getting
for Yuki.
bored because of the bad weather, couldn't go outside. And yeah,
Yeah.
so they ended up, it was a good kind of callback to like
Yeah.
acknowledging, they kind of brought it up saying, hey, enrichment, this is the
Yeah.
point of it.
So I do think, like, I like those little elements because it kind of reminds obviously, we're not supposed to assume that these dinosaurs are pets, but I do think that it's important because I've even seen, like, in zoos or wildlife sanctuaries where they will have, like, ropes hanging from the ceiling for the big cats to play with, boxes that the cats can hide in, and things like that. So, obviously, we can't, as humans, give them the same environment that they would have if they were free, but what can we do to still make sure that they are engaged and practicing skills that they would use, out in the real world? I did like that. I thought it was a very interesting and kind of fun way to throw that in with the dinosaurs.
Me too. And I actually was expecting you to kind of do a bit of a nod to, yeah, like what it feels like for Suzume to, have this creature in her home. And like you said, we shouldn't really be comparing them to pets, but it kind of does remind you of like having your first pet, having them get into things that you don't want them to get into, having a different sleep schedule, being very dependent on you. And I think a lot of people with children, with like newborns, babies, can also kind of relate to that having this new life, whatever it is, like realizing that you've got to care for it 24/7, you're not going to have much sleep. You're going to be hungry because you've got to take care of this creature before you. Like there's all of these reasons where we could definitely kind of see the relation, even if, it's not a pet, it's not a baby, it's not like a human child, but it does have those nods where I think that scene's super relatable to a lot of different types of readers.
Yeah, for sure. I related so hard to her, like, getting in the shower and then coming out and her entire house just being trashed. I was like, "Yep, I've been there."
Yeah, sounds about right. Meanwhile, the next chapter, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that's the least relatable one. Let's see here. And actually I think it was Benkei. So that's the baby dinosaur's name, Benkei. But
Thank you.
the following chapter after that, part one and part two. So we got two part one and twos. We got two chapters working together. We got a single chapter, which is called One Summer in Dino Land. And that one followed two teens as they went on, a bit of a Dino Land park trip. And that's kind of probably, that was our least favorite chapter, I think. We both can agree.
Yeah, for sure. That's where I was, headed with the bookish bite, that I don't like being in the head of teens. The entire time, this young man is just devastated that this girl is not gonna like him. There's no way that she can be interested in him. He's in his head the entire time. down on
Mhm.
himself, and
Over talking. He's like, I'm talking too much. She clearly wouldn't like me. Ugh, yeah.
I just couldn't. I was like, I don't wanna be here. And then, of course, Suzume comes in on one of the scenes and is like, "Let's talk about dinosaurs." And I was like, "Yes, yes, please. Let's
Please.
talk about dinosaurs."
Yeah, so that ended up obviously being like a great part in the chapter. I didn't really care about the rest. I did appreciate that we got guests as
Yeah.
POVs. I think that it actually relates really well to our last read in the book club, the Dallergut Dream Department Store, where we were periodically in the heads of customers. But
Yeah.
with this one, it just wasn't the right demographic for us. It wasn't the right kind of, drama for these teens. But I did love that she suddenly popped in, and it shows that, we are the main characters of our own stories, right? So, like, even though Suzume is the main character for her, and when we follow her, we're with her, she is just kind of this, mini character, secondary character in someone's life, gives them the info, and then they're on their way, and they might not really notice her, but we are like, oh my gosh, it's Suzume, and we can be excited to see her just kind of gracefully touching someone's life without really, causing too much of a stir where they notice her. But she
Yeah.
clearly did kind of like help in her own way when she was describing the dinosaurs and how it kind of related to this young man's life and him thinking he's in this love triangle when in reality he's really not.
Yeah. I could have dealt without that chapter. I did like the callbacks to, like, Masaru's, horn. I
Mhm.
appreciate those moments, and it does remind me of how with Delegate, we had these characters that would come in, and they would go to different floors, and we would get to explore the floors on a customer's perspective, like what type of dream they're wanting. And so with this young couple being able to see this marketing, I don't want to call it a scheme, but this marketing platform that they've used to try and gain money for the park that we saw in a past volume, I did like the callback.
Yeah, I agree. And then we end up getting another interaction with a different guest. They aren't the main characters in this chapter, but obviously they impact moving forward another kind of marketing scheme. So yet again, we're getting this kind of continual theme of them saying, hey, we need the public to interact. We need them to get excited and to care for these dinosaurs. We have this little boy who just wants to see the T-Rex. He just wants to see the T-Rex so badly. But at Dino Land, our T-Rex, Hanako, is getting old. She's an oldie. I think she's like in her 30s. She doesn't always want to come out. She isn't always having the energy. She's a bit picky. Her teeth aren't the same way that they were, so they've got to be careful about what they feed her. But she has a birthday coming up, and they really want to celebrate it because, one, it's kind of rare to be able to see a dinosaur like this live as long, and they
Yeah.
can celebrate that it's still there with them. And I loved them trying to figure out, like, what could we give her? What's her quote unquote birthday cake going to be? And how do we get people to want to see her? But there's also the understanding that these dinosaurs won't always do what you're hoping for because,
Yeah.
on the day, they're just crossing their fingers that she would come out. She doesn't have to. They're not going to force her to come out. But there's just this, will she do it on her birthday? Will it all come together? And not that it's like fully about consent, but I kind of like that they're like, we don't fully control these creatures, like they decide whether they come out to the public or not. And yeah, it worked out though, which was really sweet.
Yeah. I really liked the conversation though, because you're dealing with a child at that point. So we did have, our child POV in here where he is just so intent and so angry that he isn't getting his way, essentially, and
Mhm.
expecting a wild animal to do what he wants on his time frame. I liked the conversations that Suzume was able to have, not saying or not telling the kid that, "No, that's not gonna happen. You're wrong. You shouldn't want to do," like, she wasn't judgmental about it. She was just like, "Hey, Hanaku? Is that's the right
Hanako.
name? Hanako is tired today, and, but we're like," and then hyping up an event. "We're gonna have a birthday party for her, and you should come and see her on her birthday." I like the constant feedback of knowing that these are wild animals and that they're not pets, that they're not going to be obedient per se. that they are going to have a mind of their own, and that they are just trying to make them as comfortable as possible, especially in their old age. So yeah, I liked that a lot. I also enjoyed the fact that Suzume made it a cake, even though it was just a big pile of meat.
Just a bunch of meat. Yeah, like it literally is just like a bunch of and then I think they ended up having, what was it? It was another dinosaur carcass on top, being like, ooh, like what a beautiful treat for her. And it truly is, like, even in the depictions, just a big cake looking stack of meat bricks. That's kind of what it looked like. Oh God. And actually, another thing, so speaking of the illustrations, I do love how detailed the dinosaurs are. And I think that you even do see their age a little
Yeah.
bit. Like when I was when I was reading this manga and like getting to the close-ups of Hanako, you can see she's an older dinosaur. Like you can see there's like some like splotches, discolorations, her hair, there's like wrinkles. Like you can just see that she's an older dinosaur. And I just appreciate that detail because they didn't really have to do that. And on top of that, because the humans they all look very young to me, unless they are like gray and like having beards and everything like that.
Yeah.
Because even Kaido, I didn't mention this, but at the beginning, you discover that, so he was a part of the incident, right? From 2006, 15 years ago. And now we have Suzume as like a dino keeper. And I was like, again, with volume 1, we didn't know their ages, but I was like, why did we think there would be like any type of love interest? Like, I mean, age gap, whatever. But that is very significant. He's been in the game for so long and he looks like a fresh baby face. Like, I was shocked when they said 15 years ago and he looks exactly the same. I was like, okay, so he's what, like maybe 35, 40, depending on like after schooling and everything like that. And Suzume is pretty much like a new recruit.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly didn't notice that until just now.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
he does look, because he looks the same age as her. Because we even talked about in the first volume how you would have preferred her be with Kaido instead of the doctor.
like, oh my
And I was like,
gosh.
yeah, they look like they're the same age. That could totally happen. And nope, they are not. Not saying that they
Yeah.
can't still end up together, but like,
It would be an adjustment. Like it would
yes.
be a situation where you have to acknowledge like the age gap of what's going on. And I feel like it just suggests that if it does, it's not happening anytime soon because she is like not a child, but she's like very
Right.
young, very new. It just doesn't make any sense, especially with her age. The one thing though too is where this left off, because we know basically where volume 3 is going, in the sense that Suzume has proven herself to an extent. And the next stage now is that she has to try her hand in every different department with different dino keepers. So that means we're going to meet more of a cast, and she can figure out where she best fits or what she's most interested in. And I did love how the ending spread was just all of the dino keepers she may be interacting with. And for me, I was like, oh, yep, I recognize a few of these. We're going to meet them soon. Very exciting.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm not going to ask the question yet because I'll ask that question at the end. That'll be my question. I do have a question pertaining all of the characters that we might meet, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I want to cover. Do you want to cover anything before we answer our 3 questions?
No, I think we've been pretty thorough, and I'm excited for us to, get into the 3 questions, and then we can just jump into volume 3.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer them first since I have the question at the top of my mind. I'll answer that question first. So, the third question we always answer is whether or not we have predictions or questions for future sections or future pages that we're going to be reading. So, my question is pertaining to the end, where we learn that Suzume is going to have to figure out where she belongs in the park, which type of dinosaur she wants to specialize in. And I wonder, based off of the cover of the third volume, if each volume is going to be a different type of dinosaur. I don't like a different subsection of the park for her to view, or if we're going to get multiple people that she's following in multiple volumes. I don't know. So that's my question that I have. Then Since I'll go in reverse order. My favorite character, I would say it's still Suzume as far as the humans go. The dinosaur characters, I'm gonna have to go with our little, what do we say? Benkai? Ben
Yeah, Benkei.
I think he's so cute, and I like the fact that he always wants food and he never wants to sleep. It just made me his chapter made me happy. He was very, very fun, even though she was exhausted the entire time. I really liked that scene. And then, my rating, I think that this particular volume I enjoyed less than the first one because of some of the elements in it. The teenagers, some of the expectations that I had regarding the incident, and just some details I thought were missing. I think that I'm gonna lower my rating of this volume to a 3.75. So I'm still not hating it. I still really enjoy it. I just think that I do like the first volume better than this one. Your turn. What about you?
My turn. So, yes, I'm going to answer in reverse order. How dare I? But I think that you ended on a good point to say, I agree. Like, I agree with a 3.75. Honestly, I feel as though a 3.75, I think, in the 5 volumes I've read, is the lowest I've ever given. And I think it was this one. I'm pretty sure I definitely gave at least one in the series 3.75, and I feel like this probably was it just because it isn't as good as volume one. It's kind of a filler book. We're setting things up. There were important scenes, there were some
Yeah,
good moments, but yeah, it just didn't pack as much of a punch. And I think as we get further, I grow ever more invested from this point on, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I may have given it a 4, but upon reread, if anything, it feels like a 3.75 for me. And then that makes me wonder if I gave the third volume 3.75. I can't remember, but either way, I agree with that. And then for favorite character, I agree Suzume. Even though we learn more about Kaido, I feel as though he also seems to trust Suzume more, which is like a nice growth between their relationship. Where obviously in the first chapter, he was a bit callous, a bit harsh, saying, if you can't do this, you might as well get out of town now, kind of situation, where he's kind of putting more responsibility on her. They had this really good moment where I think he's the one who says, hey, whenever you're down and uncertain about what to do next, think about what the dino's perspective is. Don't just watch them, but observe, figure out what's best. And that obviously leads her to know what to do for Banky. So I think that he ends up being a key part, even if he's not at the forefront the entire time after,
yeah.
his whole backflash moment. And I will give a little bit of a highlight to Hanako. I'll highlight Hanako, the elderly T Rex, because she was very sweet and just doing her best. And I feel like with T Rexes, we always see them being vicious and horrific, and as they are, they should be respected as a terrifying predator. But I liked seeing this side because I think people wouldn't really think to see this like geriatric dinosaur that's, just doing her best. And they're kind of like just trying to give her a really nice, peaceful last few years of her life, however long she has. So I'll highlight that dinosaur because you already chose the really rambunctious baby, which is interesting because we did have this parallel. We had a very
Yeah.
baby at the beginning, and then we ended with this elderly dinosaur. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then, I mean, even Ichigo is an interesting comparison to a life cut short prematurely. So we did get a variety of perspectives, actually, which I do appreciate upon reflection. And then, as far as your question, I will say I'll confirm some things while also remaining vague, that we definitely gain more perspectives, more dinosaurs to meet. And I think that you'll see that as the volumes go on, even beyond volume 3, people's own journeys will start to blend together, because this character, I know for a fact that we get him in various volumes. And yeah, so just be aware that this ends up kind of being this episodic journey of different people's characters. And Suzume remains the main character, but it's interesting how you grow invested in other people who,
Yeah.
aren't even the leading lady.
Well, on that note, we do need to move on to volume 3, which is the last volume that we are reading for this manga series for the podcast. And our last book that we're reading for our translation season. So hopefully you'll join us. If so, read volume 3 by Friday of next week and join us for our last discussion. Happy reading!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Not Reading for Content. Be sure to check the description for a schedule of our upcoming reads for this season. And for reminders and other updates, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at Not Reading for Content. Where else can listeners find you, Danny?
I have a booktube and an Instagram. Both can be found at danny.dabbles. What about you?
I have the same platforms. My booktube is at Leandra the TBR0, and my Instagram is at Leandra_the TBR0. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to tune in next Friday for our next episode.